Michael Kane, a self-made billionaire, sat at the head of a lavish dining table in his sprawling mansion. The room was filled with laughter and conversation, but none of it was directed at him. His wife and children seemed lost in their own worlds, indifferent to his presence. For years, Michael had ignored the nagging feeling that their affection was tied more to his fortune than to him. But tonight, that feeling became undeniable. As he stared at the golden chandelier above, a daring thought crossed his mind. What if he disappeared? Not permanently, but just long enough to uncover the truth. Did they love him for who he was, or was he merely a means to their luxurious lifestyle? Michael made up his mind. He would fake his own death and watch from the shadows to see their true colors. Michael knew he couldn't execute such a bold plan alone. The next morning, he met with his trusted lawyer and closest friend Jacob in his private study. Jacob listened intently as Michael outlined his idea, his expression shifting between shock and concern. "You're serious about this?" Jacob asked, leaning forward in his chair. "Dead serious," Michael replied with a faint smile. "No pun intended. I need to know the truth, Jacob, and this is the only way." Reluctantly, Jacob agreed to help. Together, they worked out every detail. A staged car accident would be the centerpiece of the deception, complete with a burning vehicle, falsified police reports, and a public announcement of Michael's untimely demise. To the outside world, Michael Kane would be gone. Days later, everything was set in motion. News outlets reported the tragic accident of the billionaire philanthropist, showing footage of the charred remains of a luxury car. Tributes poured in from around the globe, but Michael remained hidden, watching it all unfold from a discreet location. As he sat in the shadows of a dimly lit room, his gaze fixed on the television screen, he couldn't shake the question that haunted him. Will I finally see who they truly are? As the news of Michael's death spread, his family's reactions began to surface, each more telling than the last. Sophia, his wife, held a press conference, her voice trembling with emotion. "Michael was the love of my life," she declared, wiping away a perfectly timed tear. But behind closed doors, her actions painted a different picture. Within hours, she was on the phone with the family lawyer, discussing how quickly she could access his accounts. "How long before the funds are released?" she whispered, her tone sharp and calculating. Daniel, the eldest son, appeared calm on the surface, but his frustration boiled over as he read through the terms of the will. His inheritance was locked behind a series of conditions. Conditions he viewed as nothing more than his father's final attempt to control him. "Why does he always have to make things difficult?" he muttered, slamming the document on the desk. Claire, Michael's daughter, seemed unfazed by the loss. Instead, she was busy planning a shopping spree in Paris. "It's what Dad would have wanted," she said flippantly, scrolling through a luxury travel site. To her, Michael's death was just another event in a life built on indulgence. Liam, the youngest son, was the only one who appeared genuinely affected. Sitting alone in his room, he clutched an old photograph of himself with his father. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered, "Why did you leave, Dad?" Unlike the others, Liam mourned not for the money, but for the man who had been his mentor and guide. Through hidden cameras placed around the house, Michael observed everything. Sophia's betrayal, Daniel's frustration, Claire's indifference, and Liam's grief played out before his eyes like a cruel theater. Each moment hit him with a mix of heartbreak and anger. Michael leaned back in his chair, his hands trembling. Was this my family all along? He thought bitterly. Yet amidst the pain, Liam's sincerity gave him a glimmer of hope. Michael continued to watch from the shadows as the true nature of his family began to emerge. Sophia, once the woman he had trusted above all else, was the first to shock him. Late one evening, she met with one of his biggest business rivals, Victor Langston, at a private restaurant. Hidden microphones captured every word. "I want to sell my shares," Sophia said, her voice low but firm. Victor leaned back in his chair, his grin sly. "That's a bold move, considering your husband's company built your lifestyle." Sophia's gaze didn't waver. "Michael isn't here to protect it anymore. I need liquidity, and you're the best option." Michael's heart sank as he watched her cold calculation. His mind flashed back to years earlier, Sophia standing by his side in their small, rundown apartment, encouraging him through the darkest days of his career. "We'll get through this together, Michael," she had once said. Those words, once a source of strength, now felt hollow. Meanwhile, Daniel was scheming in his own way. Frustrated by the conditions of the will, he set his sights on manipulating his siblings. "We could contest the will," he suggested to Claire one afternoon. "Dad's rules don't make sense. If we work together, we can get a larger share." Claire, sipping a glass of wine, barely looked up. "And what's in it for you, Daniel?" "Equal distribution," he said smoothly. But Claire wasn't naive. "Don't play games with me," she snapped, her tone icy. "I know you're only in this for yourself." The tension between them grew as Claire began to suspect Daniel's true motives. Arguments erupted in the house, each more heated than the last. Through it all, Michael watched with a heavy heart. The family he had worked so hard to provide for was fracturing under the weight of greed and betrayal. Yet amidst the chaos, one thought lingered in his mind. Was this my fault? Did I put wealth above family for too long? Alone in his hidden retreat, Michael sat in silence, the weight of his family's betrayal pressing heavily on his chest. The flickering glow of the surveillance screens illuminated his face, revealing a mix of anger, sadness, and regret. As he watched Sophia finalize her deal with his rival and Daniel sow discord among his siblings, Michael couldn't help but turn his thoughts inward. For years, he had been consumed by the pursuit of success, working tirelessly to build an empire. He had told himself it was all for his family, to give them a life of comfort and insecurity. But had his ambition come at too great a cost? Memories flooded his mind. Flashbacks of tender moments played like a bittersweet montage. He saw Sophia standing by him during their early struggles, encouraging him when failure seemed inevitable. He remembered Daniel as a boy, eagerly seeking his approval with every achievement. Claire, once his little girl, would run into his arms, giggling as he lifted her high. And Liam, his youngest, would wait patiently by the door, clutching a book, hoping for a quiet moment with his father. But those moments felt like lifetimes ago. Somewhere along the way, his relentless drive had built a wall between him and the people he cared for most. Michael leaned forward, his hands gripping the edge of the desk. "This isn't just about them," he murmured to himself. "It's about me. I created this distance. I let the money and power overshadow what truly mattered." As the realization sank in, Michael made a decision. It was time to stop hiding in the shadows. He couldn't watch his family unravel any longer. But he wouldn't reveal himself just yet. First, he needed to set things right, to ensure that when he returned, it wouldn't just be as their provider, but as their father and husband. Michael stood, his expression resolute. The man who had built an empire was now ready to rebuild his family, no matter what it took. The Kane mansion was abuzz with tension as the family gathered in the dining room. The lawyer had summoned them to discuss the will, and emotions were running high. Daniel slammed a fist on the table. "This is ridiculous. Why should I have to prove anything to get what's mine?" Claire crossed her arms, glaring at her brother. "Maybe because Dad knew you'd try to take more than your share." "Don't act like you're any better," Daniel shot back. "You're only here because you want your shopping fun." Sophia, seated at the head of the table, raised a hand to silence them. "Enough. Fighting won't solve anything. We need to focus on how to move forward." But even her voice carried an undertone of frustration, her facade of control slipping. As the argument reached its peak, the doors to the dining room swung open. The room fell silent as Michael stepped in, his presence commanding and undeniable. "Move forward? Without me?" he said, his voice steady yet sharp. Shock rippled across the room. Sophia's face turned pale. Claire gasped, and Daniel froze mid-sentence. Liam, seated quietly in the corner, stared in disbelief, his eyes welling with tears. "Dad?" Liam whispered, his voice trembling. "Yes, Liam, I'm here," Michael said, his gaze softening as it fell on his youngest son. Then his tone hardened as he turned to the rest of the family. "But I wish I could say I'm proud of what I've seen." Michael stepped further into the room, his eyes scanning each of them. "Sophia, the woman who once stood by me through thick and thin, now making deals with my enemies to sell off everything I built." Sophia's expression shifted from shock to defensiveness. "Michael, No," he interrupted. "Let me finish. I trusted you, Sophia, but what I saw wasn't love. It was greed. Have I really become so insignificant to you?" Sophia lowered her head. tears forming in her eyes. It wasn't about the money, Michael. I thought I lost you. I didn't know how to handle it. Michael's voice softened slightly. And yet, instead of mourning, you were already planning your next move. He turned to Daniel next. And you, Daniel, my eldest, the one I thought would lead this family one day. Instead, I see you scheming, manipulating your siblings, all to claim a bigger piece of the pie. Is this what I taught you? Daniel's face reddened, anger flaring in his eyes. You taught me nothing but how to follow your orders. Everything I've done is because you never trusted me to make my own decisions. Michael's disappointment was palpable. And what have you done to earn that trust? Prove me wrong, Daniel. Show me you can be more than this. Finally, Michael looked at Liam, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation. And then there's you, Liam, the only one who showed me what it means to truly care. His voice cracked as he continued. You reminded me of what I've lost sight of. Kindness, empathy, and love. For that, I'm grateful. The room was heavy with silence as Michael addressed them all. I staged my death to see the truth, and what I found was a family broken by greed and selfishness. I chased wealth, thinking it would give us everything. But I was wrong. Without love, without trust, wealth means nothing. Sophia wiped her tears, stepping toward him. Michael, I'm sorry. I never wanted this. I just didn't know how to live without you. Daniel, still visibly angry, finally lowered his head. I don't know what to say. Michael sighed. It's not words I want, Daniel. It's action. If this family's going to heal, it starts with all of us working to change. He stepped back, his voice resolute. I'm giving each of you the chance to make things right. Don't waste it. The air in the room was thick with silence as Michael's words lingered. Sophia, trembling with emotion, finally broke down. Tears streamed down her face as she stepped closer to him. Michael, I'm so sorry, she said, her voice cracking. I let my fear and grief cloud my judgment. I was so lost without you, and I didn't know how to handle it. But none of it matters compared to losing you. Michael looked at her, his own emotions threatening to surface. Sophia, I don't need perfection. I just need honesty. We've lost our way, but if you're willing to fight for us, so am I. Sophia nodded, clutching his hands tightly. I'll do whatever it takes to repair what we've broken. Michael turned to Daniel, who stood stiffly, his gaze fixed on the floor. And you, Daniel? You've made mistakes, but I've made some too. I pushed you too hard, expecting you to be perfect. I see now that I didn't give you the space to grow. Daniel finally looked up, his eyes filled with shame. I was selfish, Dad. I wanted to prove myself, but I went about it all wrong. I don't deserve your trust, but I'll work to earn it. Michael placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. You've got a second chance, Daniel. Use it wisely. But understand, trust takes time to rebuild. You'll need to prove that you can lead not just with your head, but with your heart. Then Michael's gaze softened as he turned to Liam. Liam, you've been the one constant in this storm. You reminded me of the values I should have upheld all along. You've got a good heart, and I want to help you nurture it. Liam's voice was steady but emotional. I just want us to be a family again, Dad. That's all I've ever wanted. Michael smiled, pulling his youngest son into an embrace. We will be, Liam, and I'll make sure I'm the father you deserve. From now on, I'm here for you, as your mentor and your dad. For the first time in years, the Kane family began to mend. It wasn't an instant transformation. Trust would take time to rebuild, and wounds would take time to heal. In the following weeks, they worked together to rebuild their relationships. Sophia and Michael spent more time together, revisiting the places where their love had first bloomed. Daniel, under Michael's guidance, began working in the company, learning humility through tasks that taught him the value of hard work. Liam, with Michael's mentorship, started pursuing his passion for philanthropy, helping underprivileged communities in honor of his father's values. One evening, the family gathered in the mansion's garden, planting a new tree together. As they worked side by side, laughter and conversation filled the air, a sound Michael hadn't heard in years. Looking at his family, Michael felt something he hadn't in a long time. Peace. For the first time, he saw not just a house, but a home. He turned to Sophia, who smiled softly at him. We've come a long way, she said. Michael nodded. And we've still got a long way to go. But as long as we're together, we'll get there. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the Kane family stood around the young tree, their hands intertwined. It was the start of a new chapter, one built on love, trust, and the realization that true wealth could never be measured in dollars. Michael and his family stood together in the mansion's garden, their hands dirty from planting a young sapling. The tree stood tall against the backdrop of the setting sun, its fragile branches swaying gently in the breeze. It was more than just a tree. It was a symbol of renewal, a fresh start for a family that had been broken, but was now beginning to heal. As Michael patted the soil around the base, he looked up at his family. This tree will remind us of what truly matters. It's not the money, the house, or the company. It's us. It's love, trust, and the willingness to grow together. He stood and wiped his hands, glancing at Sophia. I've decided to donate half of my fortune to charity, he said. This wealth needs to do more than just sit in accounts. It should help those who need it most. Sophia looked at him, her surprise giving way to a soft smile. That's a decision only you could make, Michael, she said. And it's the right one. Michael gazed at the tree as his family gathered around him. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. In testing his family, he had uncovered a deeper truth, that love and understanding were the greatest measures of wealth. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the family walked back toward the mansion, their hearts lighter and their bonds stronger than ever.